Hey guys, how are you? This is Ishai Breslauer, your host of the CRE Shark Eye Show. Hope you guys are doing fantastic. Today we have some locations that we haven't spoken about yet. Courtney Fricke is actually a very active real estate person, and I have met her on Clubhouse at the time, and I heard what she had to say, and it was fascinating and exciting, and I'm really appreciative that she came on our show today. Courtney, thank you so much for being with us.
Yishai, thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be here. It's my pleasure.
Thank you. You know what? Before we even start to dig into the story and the markets, etc., if you could give us a 2-minute elevator pitch of your business.
Absolutely. I am a full-time real estate investor and entrepreneur now down in the New Orleans area. I started off flipping, added in some wholesaling and things like that, but I realized that the real wealth was in holding properties. So I sought out to do that. I started holding single family, and then I started getting into, I've been making the transition, getting more and more into commercial. But I love taking a challenge. So everything from value add situations, from title issue, ownership issues, management issues, taking all those things and finding a way to find a solution. And so I'm down in the New Orleans area. I also run the Real Estate Investment Association down there. I have the privilege of being on the radio down there, some other things. And so I'm a mile deep in my market. I love it. Just recently expanded to the Mississippi Gulf Coast as well as my secondary market. So I'm loving it. I really enjoy real estate for all that it can provide, everything from the wealth and tax benefits to the lifestyle. So I appreciate that.
It's awesome. And it sounds like we have a lot to talk about. So I'm excited to this one too. But you know what, before we dig into everything, how did you get into this?
Sure thing. So funny enough, I stumbled into a job. I had just, my background's nonprofit work. I was working, I just came back into the country from working in a nonprofit, and I had a job where I was working as like 2 part-time jobs, just getting back in the country, just getting settled. And there was someone who I was working with said, "Hey, I think you'd be a good fit for this job that I'm leaving. It's a salary, benefits." I said, "Okay, yeah, let me check it out." Long story short, I get the job. Well, it was being a property manager for a marina that was like a boat marina that was owned by an apartment complex corporation. And so I get the job. I went there going for the salary, the benefits, the things like that, right? I was just coming back in the country. I wanted some more stability. But there's a kind of a lot that kind of went into that job. So my first introduction to real estate really was as an employee. But it was a very unique situation because I asked the guy, so I was an assistant manager before, and he was leaving an assistant manager position. He's like, "Hey, you'll be a good fit for this." I said, "Okay, tell me the good and the bad and the ugly, man. Tell me what to expect with this job." He said, "Well, the manager, you're the assistant manager, but the manager," actually, he was from New York. He said, "He's a little rough around the edges, right?" And I was like, "Okay." And he was like, "But he also has cancer. So like Mondays, you have to like help him, because he comes back from getting chemo. So you have to help him up the steps into the office." I was like, "Okay." Right. Day one, corporate was there doing my onboarding. And it was a Monday. My very first day at the job, they're doing my paperwork. The guy from corporate came in to come set me up, and the manager is getting his chemo. We get a phone call by the end of the day. The guy from corporate's face goes white. He was like, "Oh my God." The manager passes away on my very first day on the job.
Wow.
And it was the only marina in their portfolio of apartment complexes. And basically it was kind of like, "Hey, your main training was supposed to be with him.
Yeah.
We don't really know how they run this, And so he was like, "Look at those cabinets, go read the paperwork in there.
Go figure it out."
So go figure it out. So I got thrown into, as an employee, into an asset that had 40% occupancy. It was a 105 slip marina, and it had 1-star reviews on all the websites that counted for voters. And so, we had a little bit of an Everest to climb, right? And no one teaching me or anything like that, I started saying, "Okay, how can I make this place better? I'm not going to twiddle my thumbs." And so as an employee, I actually as the manager, I turned the asset around and prepared it to the point where they actually put it for sale.
Tell me something.
And
I'm sorry, I'm stopping. I just want to understand a couple
you're
of
good.
things. So I love this. Meaning, I don't love the fact that the guy died.
Sure.
That's a very sad story. But your story is exciting because you had to figure things out for yourself. It's really great. Which year was that, by the way?
This was 2014.
2014. And how many units you had there in that thing? Or
so it was 105. It was 105 slip marina.
wow. So you had like a full blast property to manage and to learn, about the property and about management. That's exciting. Keep on going. That's
sure.
Great information.
And as a W-2 employee in the real estate industry, yes, it's boats. So we're not necessarily having unit turnovers like you would with apartments. But first of all, I started learning so much, but I had 2 tenants who became mentors to me during that time. One of them was a business owner who actually was an acquisitions manager for BP Oil. So he would go buy assets for them and stuff. And then the second one was a landlord. And so once I got the marina, within 2 years, when I got it to 100% occupied, I had a lot more time to kill during the day.
Right.
And so I started talking with these guys and I started learning. At the very end of it all, though, I started understanding that what I did was a skill set. Turning an asset like that around from 40% occupied to 100% occupied. How
many? 40%?
From 40% occupied to 100% occupied.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and it was one of those things where I had really no oversight, and it was kind of, my parents had always taught me to leave a place better than you find it. So that was kind of just me not wanting to twiddle my thumbs every day and just going out and finding ways to improve it little by little. And then out of nowhere. So it goes to show that if I could do it with no training and just some grit, then anyone can really figure this out. So a big part to that, I turned the property around. I got to where the property was singing, 100% occupied. I added some additional streams of revenue for the property, got the reviews online to 5-star reviews, all the things that really kind of mattered. And then the company put it up for sale. And the acquisition guy, the mentor, the guy who was a business acquisition manager for BP Oil, who had just retired, he says, I don't think you understand what you just did for them. You took an underperforming asset and you turned around and got it performing. And he was like, if you could only understand that is a skill set. So during that time, I bought my very first property. And it was a single family property.
Tell me something. I'm sorry I'm stopping you again. It's just so exciting.
No,
and there's one thing that really is in my mind right now. And you did such an amazing job, obviously, with that property. Could you point out one thing or 2 things that you did a lot of stuff in order to get the NOI better and in order to get the occupancy to 100%. But the one question I have in my head is, what are the 2 main things the 2 main actions that you could point out that you have nailed it to get that property to that level?
I actually listened to what the customers were saying. So I started getting in the boating community to listen to what they were looking for. And then I went around to the competition, and I was looking at how things that were run really well, how they were operating, and then the ones that weren't working really well. I was just paying attention to the needs of what the avatar client was looking for. And I actually just put in the work. Most people,
I love that.
They maybe, so customer service, right?
Yeah.
Plenty of past jobs were just customer service based. And so it was purely from a customer service. And most people forget, as a landlord, in the hotel industry or the Airbnb short-term rental industry, people look at the customer experience, but I feel like landlords don't often really look at that. Right.
I love that. And then you said you went on and you got your first property. How was that?
Oh, it was great. So I did it as a live-in flip. So I had just moved back in the country and I was like, okay, I want to find something. So I'm younger. I didn't want to be the millennial living at home. So I said, okay, let me figure out how to start establishing credit. Let me start figuring these things out. Long story short, though, I bought a condo that was a short sale. So I had to go, baptism by fire, a short sale where the bank we had a request that the bank would accept less than what was owed against the property. I did all that, and then I lived in and fixed it up. And so it was one of those things. Once I saw the value of it, after putting a little bit of sweat equity, I saw the value of it. I was hooked because I made more in 9 weeks of fixing up that property, on the weekends and at night. I made more with equity than I ever made as a salary in a year. So I was like, how can I do this again and again? And again, I realized how just really overall value add, right? You find something broken to some degree, you add the value to it, whether that's management, whether that's repairs, whatever. I started noticing a trend here in real estate.
Interesting.
And fell in love with it.
Was it all cash, or you used also financing at the time?
So that one, I actually used a loan from a family member. So down here in the South, we have small purchase prices. I bought it for $40,000. So it was not a huge loan from a family member. And it was technically cash. But it showed me the power of, I only put $5,000 in renovations for it, and it being worth $85,000. And so I saw the power of leverage. I was like, man, I could do this again if I could just do this again and again.
Amazing. And fast forward, and basically you started buying, I guess, more and more. Could you tell us a little bit about the development in terms of your growth and what came next, and the methods that you used, et cetera, your strategies until this day?
Sure. So that very first purchase, I did that while I was managing the marina. I did not buy my second property until I quit the marina a year later. And I put in my 2 weeks, and I said, you know what, I'm going to go all in on this real estate thing. So I left the marina, and then within that 2 weeks of leaving the marina, I also bought my next project, and I started flipping because I left a salary. So I needed to get quick money to put food on the table, right? So I started flipping. I also started wholesaling because I started realizing, okay, I'm very limited in money, but I know how to hustle and find good deals. So that's when I started learning about things like wholesaling. So I started doing that. But after a while, I started getting, good at that and started doing more projects. I was hitting into some barriers because I didn't have the capital. And then there were times where I would get upset because I was like, man, this was such a good deal, but I had to wholesale it because I didn't have access to capital to take it down and own it. So then I eventually, one of my favorite mentors says, don't wish it was easier, wish you were better. So then I had to start learning how to raise capital. And so I started figuring out how to do two things: to raise private capital from everyday individuals, so private money lenders, and then secondly, creative financing, so utilizing the seller or the financing in place. So then I started holding some properties. So fast forward, I've done over 150 deals. A good bit up until 2019, the majority of those were flips and wholesale deals. But I started holding. I now have about 40 doors that I've started holding now, and now I'm aggressively expanding from there.
Beautiful. So you really made a huge progress. And tell me something. So today, if you have to define today what you do and what the type of deals that you're going after, would you define it as multifamily mostly, or still you're looking for the hustle and bustle of single family flips or even holds, whatever? What is your focus today?
So it's actually really funny. I literally say that I'm only looking for a problem. I don't care how it comes wrapped. I still am a generalist in the sense that right now, of all the projects I'm working on, I have some single family that I'm wholesaling, the single family that I'm holding, single family that I'm flipping, and then I've got some multifamily that I'm flipping, and I have some multifamily that I'm holding. I have some land that we're developing. So a lot of it is, I would still say I'm a generalist in the sense that I have done many different exit strategies, but I also have done many different asset classes. So because I'm still not ready to niche down, saying, hey, this is exactly the one thing I'm going after. So I generally say, hey, bring me a problem and I'm interested.
That's very cool. And obviously the solution of the problems is what we call value add. And that's where the capital is being made. Tell me something. You've seen a lot, obviously, a lot of properties that you've been involved in, got into, invested in, flipped, renovated, did a bunch of actions. And then comes COVID. What did you see, especially in your area? If you could elaborate a little bit about the area, what it went through COVID and where is it coming now? What do you see in your area today? What type of market is, we're dealing with over there?
Sure. So I'm down in New Orleans. So I technically live in the suburbs of New Orleans. Takes me 25 minutes from my home to get to downtown New Orleans. New Orleans is a blue city in a red state. But most people talking about COVID have talked about the impact of blue and red. Politically, what those impacts have happened. For example, in the suburbs, it's been a lot more lenient there as far as eviction starting sooner, the ability to businesses opening back up, people going back to work, versus in the actual city proper of New Orleans, that's actually been more restrained, where it has actually been, I've seen many historically known businesses that many people know shut down during COVID. I've seen down on Bourbon Street, there's been a lot of those bars have actually changed ownership during COVID because of the economic distress. So we've seen that. I mean, obviously we didn't have Mardi Gras last year. Right now, the city has been implementing a lot of enforcement, preparing for Mardi Gras this year, because Mardi Gras is a huge revenue maker in many different facets for the city. So it's been very interesting. So in Louisiana, we have parishes instead of counties, pretty much the same thing as a county, but we call it parish. There is a parish within the city of New Orleans that I actually sold all my properties in because of their response during COVID. Plus there were some other things. It's just, I had tolerated it for so long. So during this, market where we're at the height of the market in a lot of ways, I said, you know what, let's just start selling. So I got rid of whatever I owned in that parish.
Was mostly single family?
Small doubles and stuff like that. Okay. Small multifamily. So, but I had not liked how that parish was governed, or a lot of the infrastructure utility companies were having issues, things like that. So I went ahead and sold. Now, so with that being said, so I run a real estate investors association. We started meeting in person October of 2020 out in the suburbs. Just like 3 months ago, 3 or 4 months ago, could they start meeting in person in the actual city of New Orleans? So
isn't it incredible how much policy makers can affect the business? Isn't it incredible?
It is. And so that's something that we've been paying attention to. And so in 2021, I actually added a second market. So I'm down in Louisiana, in New Orleans. Within 45 minutes, I can go to the Mississippi Gulf Coast, right. Beachfront, stuff like that. So I added that second market for a few reasons. We had a storm hit us in August. When a hurricane hits you, and I have insurance claims almost every single one of my properties, I said, okay, I want to have some location diversification, right? Just geographically, but also policy-wise. And so not having everything in one parish or one city or even one state. So I did make that move to about 45 minutes away.
Tell me something. When you go to a new market, if you could educate everybody's listening. Some of the people who are listening obviously are savvy real estate people, anywhere from being owner, landlords, or CEO level. And some of them are top brokers, top financiers of any sort. And
Sure.
obviously, some of them are more on the beginner side of the commercial real estate end. Most of the people who listen to me are more into the commercial real estate, of course. But some of them would love to be educated, because you just said you took one market, you said, I'm done with that market for now. I want to get out of this. And then you started diversifying, what we call to go to, like you said, Mississippi, and to go to a new market. When you go to a new market as a real estate person, what are the things that you will check in order to make sure that this is the right market for you?
Sure. And just to be clear, I still have a portfolio in Louisiana, just not in that one parish. But this second portfolio that I've really been building in Mississippi, what I went and looked at first, both of my parents are from Mississippi, so I've been very familiar with it.
So
Grew
you know
up
the
around
market,
here.
yeah.
I know the market as a civilian, but looking at it through the eyes of an investor, I wanted to look at a few of the main points as far as employment. I'll tell you this, Louisiana and Mississippi are not going to hit any of your national level list of growth for population growth, for economic growth. They're just not going to hit
It's
any
not
of
Texas,
any of those lists.
right? It's not Austin, it's not Houston, it's not Florida. No. Yeah, right.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, but for example, the Mississippi Gulf Coast, they have universities there, they have military bases there, they have an airport there. And so with all of those things, I said, okay, I'm interested in being in that market because it has those factors. I see it as a value add market in general. I see that it is a market that is not on any sort of fast pace of growth like these other lists, like a Houston, like an Austin, anywhere like throughout Florida. But I do see that today we can get in there, we can buy cheap. It is primarily a cash flow market, not necessarily a huge appreciation market. So just working through that. And then from there, seeing, with it being, quote unquote beachfront, so it's the Gulf of Mexico, that also attracts, tourists, right? It attracts people who want to come for the summer. They want to come year round because we don't necessarily get very strong winters down here. So all of those factors pointed to where it was worth going in and saying, hey, what can we buy? And then what can we turn to? So my very first purchase there was a package deal of properties.
Portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Sure. It was just shy of a city block. The only thing in the city block we don't own is just a strip that I don't own is a strip of land. But I bought, it was a mobile home park, 3 single families, and then a commercial building laundromat.
Amazing. And you got them all. It was one owner and you bought it from that person?
Most of it was one owner. And then the laundromat, I had to hunt down the owner and made them an offer and bought it from them.
That's amazing. What was the drive to get actually a portfolio with so many asset classes within this little street? What went in your head when you did that?
Building my team in a new market that's 45 minutes from my house. If it was one single family home that I was buying, it was purely a economy of scale, meaning I could then bring in contractors to do multiple jobs. Going into a new market, if I was just going in for one single family home, that would be very difficult for me to kind of bring some velocity with it as far as the growth, and it would just be a slow growth. And so I had been looking at the market for a little while. This deal came up and I said, this is my opportunity to buy, to get in there to where there's enough juice to make the squeeze worth it, the work that would have to go into that.
Right. Tell me something. How would you define, I would say, the process that today you use when you go into an acquisition? You don't have to go through all the details, but give us a little bit of a walkthrough of what are the important parts when you go into the acquisition. What are you going to do? What are the Courtney little tricks that you put in in order to put some magic into the deal and to make sure that you're getting and you buy right. And then what the type of, the management, obviously from your experience, what type of management would you come in first with?
Sure. So at first I look at the seller's management style. And from there, I want to take that management style and compare it to mine. Do I think I'm a unicorn that no one else manages like me? No, I think that anyone who, educates themselves regularly, that we may be somewhat similar. But at the same time, there are a lot of people who do not see management as a skill set. And so therefore there's a lot of poor managers out there, right? So
can you point out a few things that you see?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So we bought this package where so if you include the laundromat as 31, out of the 31 units, only 6 of them had tenants. So it was because the owner was coming in and swinging their own hammer and renting to the tenants. The owner was driving in from 2 hours away to do the work on the properties and then to find someone and then eventually market for tenants and took whoever had cash first. So a very old school method of management, which obviously he had bought the property right. He just did not manage it right. He did not have a team. He did not have any help. He did not outsource. He did not delegate. And so eventually his wife said, it's either me or the project, right? And obviously he sold because, so he was not managing it right. First of all, he was not screening tenants right. He had tenants taking advantage of him. And then obviously all those vacancies, those were causing issues too. So just looking at the current management style and saying, hey, what's the first thing I can do? Just taking that and adding that value, similar to the marina that was mismanaged, right?
Right.
So I'm looking at that. So some of the things that I like to do is say, hey, how can I go in and improve the management? A big part to that is also going to be being creative with income streams. I have done a ton of creative deals, and that's really been more of my niche, has been the creativity side, not necessarily a specific asset class, but by being creative, that's where I can really, the sky's the limit with thinking up ways for income sources. For example, with the trailers, I started listening and the tenants all have storage units, or some of them have storage units. So in the very beginning, we banned letting people in the park have sheds, mostly because all the sheds came in like every different, homemade variety that you can think of. So we said, okay, for aesthetics wise, people can't do their own shed because they're not going to do it right. But what we're looking at right now is we're quoting to find some sheds that can be aesthetically pleasing, right? So we can get a manufacturer or something along those lines to where we can put sheds in place, and it then can be an add-on to people's rent. Hey, okay, great, you're going to rent from us for XYZ. You can also add on the shed for an additional X amount per month, and that can then become a revenue stream. Similar to garages within apartment complexes, right? It's the add-on for storage. Doing different things along those lines. Which ways can we, based on this community, can we improve the income? Because I'm not just one strategy. So for example, the 3 single family houses that we got right now, we're exploring how to, because it is a beachfront area, and we're not even 20 blocks from the beach. You could bike to the beach if you wanted to. We're looking at doing the 3 single family homes as Airbnbs and adding to that area. So just different things like that, just being creative with the income sources. Obviously, the last thing is I bought that property with a private money lender, with an everyday individual who had capital he wanted to put to use. So that actually can help me a lot of times because I'm not using institution-based financing. It gives me more flexibility, everything from the rates to the restrictions.
Tell me something in terms of the team can you tell us a little bit about the team that is around you that you use, whether it's in-house outsourcing, and
Sure.
what is more important, et cetera?
So I'm a huge believer that real estate is a team sport.
Exactly.
I mean, case study, look at the guy. He didn't have a team, and therefore he had bought it right, but he did not reap the fruit of his labor because he didn't outsource, he didn't delegate, he didn't have a team. Most importantly, I would say one of the biggest team members I have is a real estate specific CPA and an entrepreneurial type of CPA as well. Someone who can forward think with me as well, you know, as far as growth minded, things like that. Because a lot of times I'll talk about different projects. And before I go to sell something or I go to buy something, I want to make sure that we're capitalizing. So for example, we bought that project last year. We're going to focus heavily on bonus depreciation this year with that park and with, you know, different things along those lines. So that's a huge part. Property management, it's 45 minutes away from home. We're in a new market. People don't know who I am over there. So if I call someone, I'm just another, you know, stranger. So we're utilizing property management up front while we're doing, on my team, we have project management. So while we're doing the project management for the main value add, we're outsourcing property management. At some point in the future, I may bring it in-house, but I'm not sold on that. I am huge on building relationships because, so running the RIA down where I live, so I got involved with the RIA that's on the Mississippi Gulf Coast because I want to get to know other investors in the area. This deal came from another investor. Obviously contractors and handymen, I wish that I wish I would know more contractors and handymen. I feel like they're, especially down here, it's hard to keep them for a long lifespan. So we're always working, you know, with those. Obviously, team members are everything from lenders to insurance people, everything along those lines.
I love it. In terms of the management, as you said, meaning a lot of people are very scared sometimes when they hear the term management and they don't understand that there's a term called third-party management, or the separation between, you call it project management, maybe asset management and property management, meaning the division between actually knocking on doors, making sure everything is fine, the superintendent type of, you know, hands-on type of thing, while away from it, you just make sure the leases are fine, the screening, the, you know, making sure that everything works properly in terms of the finances, and more on the, you know, on the higher, I would say, from the bird's eye view type of a thing. And I love that. Shifting gears a little bit towards financing, both equity and debt. How do you operate with that? And, you know, I'm sure, meaning you told us you didn't build this business in 1 to 3. It took time and you worked hard, etc. But the financing, meaning the banks, the relationships with the financiers in order to get the right debt, the right rates, the right amounts, the right type of contracting, the origination, etc. And the equity side of things in terms of getting the right investor, the right amount, same idea. Could you tell us a little bit about it?
Sure. So keep in mind, I started in single family. I started off using a line of credit, a home equity line of credit. So I was using something, you know, as a line of credit. Let's just call that my own cash, and to a degree. But I had to quickly get out of that. Obviously, I told you I have experience using creative financing with sellers in the existing lien. I still use that a lot, even if it's just a partial part of the acquisition. That skill set has served me well in single family and in multifamily, in commercial. But I started using private money lenders on the single family properties. And what I started realizing is as I built those allies, that they were willing to go into the commercial world with me as well. So for example, I'm really a big fan of building a reputable, a profitable reputation. But based on your reputation, people do business with people who they like, know, and trust. a huge part to that, an absolute huge part to that is talking with people, getting to know people. I've had many private money lenders who have said, hey, look, I've got $1 million that I want to put to use. I easily have about 5 individuals. So, whether it's their retirement account, whether it is, active in the bank that they pull from the stock market, whatever. And down here in the South, you can get 30 doors for less than $1 million, right? So I've actually never syndicated. I've also never used a bank product other than that home equity line of credit. It has purely been, in the beginning, I used those lines of credit. I stopped. And I used everyday individuals to fund my deals, even the commercial ones. And then using the existing seller, or either their financing or them themselves to finance it.
And where did you find those individuals?
Networking. I build networking into my schedule. So I know networking is just almost a vague word for some. I don't go into rooms and I'm like, I'm here to network, right? No. First of all, I host a meeting. So there was a few things that I've done in my career, in my investing career, that really, I feel like brought different levels to it. Back in 2018, I started the Real Estate Investors Association in my area. Since 2018, we've had more than a few thousand people come through the doors of those events. And so it's been huge. Most of my investors I've found in those rooms, because they came and they're like, man, I don't want to go swing hammers. I don't want to go manage contractors, but I have money that want, or I have money, but I am not a good investor, which I know that can be hard for some people, but some people say, hey, I don't want to go put in the work to develop my skill set to know what is a good deal.
Right. People need that. Exactly. People always need to understand that, when it comes to real estate investing, especially real estate investing, you have the full spectrum of full hands-on to private equity type of LP, a guy who syndicates and still somewhat involved, or JV, whatever. And then it goes all the way to the other side as a guy who is, let's say, a doctor, or he does, or whatever. They do something completely different. They have somebody,
salesperson,
they want someone you trust. Just take care of it. Just let me know what I get. Just, get me out of it. I don't want to hear anything. I just want to hear the profits.
Absolutely.
I love that.
No,
concept.
Absolutely. So there's a few things I've done in my career. The first one is I started that investment club because I'm not the expert. What I do is I bring in people to come and speak at the RIA. They can't pitch anything. They just have to bring value. And because of that, it has become a huge resource for the investor community in my area, that it has led to introductions. It has led to lunches and coffees and all these things, to where one of the biggest things that you can get out of networking is an ally, not someone's business card. So a huge part to that is, so I'm constantly networking. All the investor meetups within an hour of me are on my schedule every month. And most people don't invest the time.
Tell me something.
So I do that.
Yeah, go ahead. I just want to ask you one thing, but finish your point and then I'll ask.
Go ahead.
I'll ask.
Not only do I, go ahead and ask the question.
The question is COVID. You formed this beautiful club. People are coming together. You did this so beautiful thing, but as you speak about this, and I love it, I'm thinking to myself, what did you do during COVID? How did you network during COVID? Meaning, especially someone who's so like a face-to-face live type of a person.
Yeah.
You seem to be like, what'd you do?
So keep in mind, you and I live in two different worlds. Louisiana and New York, right? Like in the Northeast, like those are two different worlds as far as their response to COVID. Like I said, my meetup started meeting in October of 2020. We started meeting back in person.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So keep in mind that now different. We had some struggles because, let's see, October we met, and then November we had 125 people in the room. I was like, crap. I was like, okay, I had some restrictions I had to work within, right? So there was that. I had to pivot. I was also the first meetup who was willing to figure out post-COVID how to start meeting back in person. I was like, okay, great. What do I need to make happen to make this safe and something where a hotel will actually let me use their conference room, stuff like that. So I solved those problems, right? The other thing I did during COVID, which is a great question, right? I know many people who used to do events who now were out of the event business because of COVID, right? They hit a wall and they gave up. I hit walls and I figure out how to get around them. So what I did is I also ramped up my social media. In beginning of 2020, I had private, social media accounts, Facebook, Instagram. I did not really post about what I do I changed that. Now I'm posting multiple times a day. I've had a few posts go viral. I've had, now people are getting to engage with me online. I have Facebook groups throughout the state of Louisiana that I use that have thousands of people in them that we online network, right? Really, networking is getting in front of people. So if I can't do it physically, I double down on doing it. So, online.
Beautiful. And you know what? The one thing I got from this interview, and I got it big, is that Courtney is a problem solver. And I think this is the key, meaning to find that issue, to find that problem where you found it, doesn't matter where, if it's within COVID or people or property or management or acquisition or whatever, or financing, you work very, very hard in order to find a solution. And that, I think, is the key lesson from this whole thing, which is beautiful. I love it. You know what? Before we said our goodbyes, if you could tell everybody, where can they find you if they want to look at your deals, invest, network with you, or whatever? How can they find you? Obviously,
Sure.
You guys see the links below, above. Courtney, go ahead.
Absolutely. So I've got a website that has all of the links of things I have going on. It has all my social media handles. It has my email. It has the events that I have. Also, the events that I do, the investor events that I do, are recorded and put up on YouTube. So that's Courtney10k.com. So that's Courtney, the number 10k.com. And it's about a dozen links. So you can find everything from my Instagram on there. So you can find me on Instagram at Courtney Fricke. Anything along those lines. And if you want to reach out, shoot me a message on Instagram. I'd love to chat with you. Whether that is you're considering, whether that if you're a local down here and you want to come and network or whatever, or that you're looking to maybe figure out how to transition from single family to commercial, whatever that looks like, I'm happy to talk.
Love that. Every single moment of it. Thank you so much for being with us. Really appreciate it.
Appreciate you having me, man.
No problem. My pleasure. And you guys, absolutely. I'm going to see you in the next show. Make sure I would listen to this show again in order to learn all these beautiful tips that we